So this is the traditional, original, default way to import images into Lightroom. So first off, everyone has Lightroom up. If it doesn't look exactly like mine, that's okay, but you should sort of see the gray screen. It should say Lightroom in the very top left corner. Okay, everybody with me on that?
Yes.
All right, cool. I will take silence as a yes, just FYI. So if you're not with me, just definitely let me know and we'll get you where you need to be, okay?
Actually, mine says Finder in the left and not Lightroom.
That's significant. So click anywhere on the Lightroom screen. Just make sure it says Lightroom. It doesn't.
Okay.
Yep.
Mine says Adobe Lightroom.
Well, that's fine.
I clicked on the little top right-hand corner, LR, Digital Zero Studio, 07 Studio.
Oh, I see.
What did you click on?
We're in the top left corner, right under the bottom menu bar down there.
Does it say Lightroom right here, though?
No, the black one, right below.
Right, but see where I'm pointing here?
Yeah.
It says
showed
Lightroom,
up.
right?
That made it show up, yeah.
Okay.
I've got
Right.
that now, sorry.
No, you're all logged in on different accounts because, Adobe, we had to buy 10 of them, so. Okay. Now, we're going to import some photos in here. Brenda, if you look down, do you see where my mouse is hovering down here?
Yep.
Okay. You should be aware you're, I think, using a different version.
Right.
So if that's the version that you have and that's the version that you'd like to use, that's fine. Just be aware it might look a little different at times. So,
Okay.
and I'll do my best to try to figure out how to, work the similarities there for you. But
Okay.
you can always open the other one up. They should both be on there. I was looking for my little highlighter, but can everybody see my mouse? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
What is your name?
Stevie.
You're Steve. Okay.
Yes. Yes. Do you need my badge number as well? I'm kidding. Kidding. Okay, so let's go to File. And then about 5 down, Import Photos and Video. I'll just leave it up there for y'all. And you can just click it when you find it.
Can you also use the import button down at the bottom of that menu, way down at the bottom left-hand corner?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
Is there any difference in good and bad?
There's not.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
I've got photos already imported that you must have.
We'll just go ahead and redo it. And, yeah.
Re-
I didn't notice that, but
like mine, you do that little plus button.
okay. Yeah, I mean, but you should always have File, Import Photos and Video, I hope.
I have import profiles and presets, but that's the only one I have.
Yours says Lightroom CC up there, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, yours is going to be a lot different. I'll just go ahead and say.
Go ahead and get on the other one.
I would, yeah. I don't really know the CC version as I use the traditional version, so I'm sure they're very similar in many ways, but yeah, it might be quite different.
I don't even see Lightroom, the regular one.
Go down to your Launchpad.
Launchpad.
Yeah, the rocket ship down there,
Yeah, I'm on there.
and then it should be in there.
I see Lightroom CC, but that's the only one I'm seeing.
Okay, you don't have Lightroom on that machine? You may want to hop up on one of those then real quick if it's not.
I just see Lightroom CC.
Those two are ready to go.
Where over there?
Yeah, I believe you. I would have to download it and that would take a minute. Sorry. I'll get it after class though. Let's see, you're on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Sorry, Brenda. Okay. So yes, to answer your question, you can click that button. There's a lot of ways to import, but I'm doing the old school way first. So File, Import, Photos, and Video. And then you get this kind of window up, right? This is your importing window. And there's several important things that we need to talk about on this guy, okay? So, source. This is where we're getting our media, our photos. This here is the operation. It's going to tell you what it's going to do to your photos with I'll explain in a moment, and then this is where your photos are going, okay? And then once we do this import, we'll get past that, and then I'll talk a little bit about the theory of the file structure, because that's super important, y'all. How many people deleted photos or files that they wish they had not deleted? Raise your hand. Yeah. Okay, so in a minute, I'll talk about that. That might be a good one to take notes on. I had one student one time. She said that she deleted her Lightroom catalog every time after she used it, and I was like, well, I guess you could do that. I guess, you know. All right.
On purpose?
Yeah. And I was like, you know what you're doing, right? And she's like, yeah, I don't care. Okay. I'm not here to judge, but that's interesting. Okay. So the source, we need to select a source, okay? Now I've made this simpler, hopefully, because beforehand we had to go through 5 or 6 folders to find it on the server. I've thrown it on the desktop, I believe, on all the computers. Yours will be different, Brenda. You're going to go to your flash drive, right? Okay. So if you go up here to select a source, hopefully it's popping up.
It is.
Okay, so you'll go to that. Everyone else go to desktop, please. And if you see a bunch of photos, that's great. You want to see the photos of the aircraft, hopefully, because that's the ones I think everybody's going to have. So if you got fish, huh?
I don't have desktop on here.
Okay. So you don't have desktop on this list?
Hit the arrow key.
Yeah, you have to hit the open the menu up by hitting the. It's actually a big button.
Oh, see, okay, so, all right, oh, I'm not a Mac, so, okay.
Yeah, it's a big button. Yeah.
I got it, all right.
All right. And how many of y'all seeing fish?
Yeah.
You are? Is everybody seeing fish?
I am not.
No.
Okay. All right. That's fine. That can be one of the first things that we organize. So I tell you what, everyone's seeing a lot of pictures, right? Everybody's seeing at least some jets, right?
Right.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and pull them in. But before we do, let me talk a little bit about what we're doing here, okay? This is super important. All right. You can do several things. This first one here, I'm up here at the top. This is, you can pick how this is going to affect these files, right? So copy is DNG. DNG is digital negative graphic. I don't know a lot about them, but I know that they'll take an already fairly good size, raw file, 20, 25 megabytes, and they'll make it, I've seen them go up to 100 megabytes. I don't know what the advantage is. Really, I'm assuming there's something in there, but it makes them huge. You probably don't need to do that. I can't be sure, but I'll tell you, I never do it because a raw file is already highest res it can be. So probably not going to do that one. Now these other 3 you might do, okay? It depends on your method. It depends on the system that you use for your catalog, okay? So we're going to call it your photo repository, right? It's where you keep all your photo files, and it's also where you keep your Lightroom documents, okay? More on that in a minute, but you want to keep all that together, know where it is, protect it with your very life, okay?
How many pictures do you want me to import?
That's up to you. That's up to you. I'd say probably not too many since it's on the class account, but it's up to you. I'd say at least 20, 30 would be fine. Let's see here, guys. Oh, yes. So copy, okay? Copy is good. So copy leaves the pictures at the source over here on the left, right? We're moving left to right, right? So you're going to have all those pictures exactly where they've always been since we started class. And you're also going to add them over here to your photo repository, all right? That is a good one to do. Now, our photo repository is in a specific place, okay? You will need to pick that place when you first start up Lightroom, okay? It's not as complicated as it seems, right? You just create a folder that will contain all your other folders and photos, as well as the Lightroom catalog. All right, you don't have to click this, but if you want to look here, I'm going to open that up, hopefully. Or I'll show you where it is, in our case. For you guys, you just want to pick somewhere to put it, okay? Somewhere on your hard drive, basically, is where that's going to go.
So copy them, put them on the hard drive?
Copy will put them in the folder that you've designated as your Lightroom photo repository. Where that goes is up to you. It's typically going to be on your internal or external hard drive, yeah. I mean, potentially you could run it off of an external flash, but
I got slightly lost. I'm not sure what you're doing.
just showing you where it currently is. So
Okay.
yours probably says something like users, DS class, all that kind of stuff, right? That's where they're going. So that's important to know. The problem is I can't simulate it the same way that you'll have it at home. So it'll be, you want to make sure that it says right there the same thing as where you want it to go.
Is this going to be the same as the Windows version?
Should be.
This is- okay.
I'm not certain about that, but I'm pretty sure I don't see why it wouldn't be.
And you want them saved in a specific place for the class? Is that right?
Well, I've already got it set up, but this is something that you'll have to set up at home.
Okay, well, where do you want these to go?
You don't need to change anything.
Oh, okay, we're just exploring, okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about kind of how you're going to want to set this up when you get home. So
So you can do a lot of work, I'm thinking Windows, initially by setting up the folders before you do anything. Like, can you set a new folder for this process? Or do you need to set up all the folders prior to even beginning?
you can do either. Lightroom can actually manage your files and folders, kind of like Windows Explorer, File Explorer, or Finder. It also can create collections, which are essentially folders that only live inside Lightroom. So, or you could do it outside, but you'd have to import them in and tell Lightroom these are those, these are these
Right.
anyway. But basically, you need a place to put all your pictures. So,
I have a basic question, and that is, if there are different versions of Lightroom, which one do you recommend we have for home use?
you only have one choice, really.
Okay,
Unless you're going aftermarket and buying something off eBay that's used, you're going to get the newest version. Yeah.
So is
It's
CC,
Lightroom 3 or CC, I think.
is
Yeah.
CC the newest version?
Well, it's the newest version that's not like an update, yeah. It's either,
It's great.
CC?
CC, yeah, you get the whole package, you get Photoshop and Lightroom.
okay, so, all right. So you're going to need to put your photo somewhere, right? This right here needs to be that place. Does that make sense? It isn't going to be the same for everybody. It is today, but when you get home, this is the folder and the drive you're putting your photos on, okay?
So is it like you import from there and then store them there?
Well, that's kind of what these options are all about, okay?
Okay.
So with copy, it's here and it's going here,
Okay.
all right? With move, it takes them away from here and puts them here, like a cut and paste. Now, I like to manually clear my card off, right? Because most of the time this is going to be coming from a camera card, okay? Like an SD card. So move, you may not want to do. And add, you probably definitely don't want to do, okay? Add is leaving them here and sourcing them over here. You probably don't want to do that because they're not actually on your hard drive. So, just to give you a for instance, if you were using a SD card and you just added them, as soon as you unplug that SD card, game's over. You need to have that card connected always to run it. So that's only if you're keeping your Lightroom catalog and your photos in different places. Don't do that. Period. Don't do that. Don't be that guy. So it's just a million times easier. Now, you can keep your photo library on an external hard drive. That's what I do. I just keep it all there, right? Does that make sense? And what that is, basically, Lightroom does not absorb all your photos inside itself like, say, Apple Photos does. Your photos are all still there in the file, but if you've put them in the Lightroom catalog, they're linked up, right? So all the edits we're going to do in here, all the cataloging, that's only living in the Lightroom world, okay? The photos are like the people, and the Lightroom catalog is like the dreams that they have. You know what I mean? I don't know. Interesting analogies, right? But it's something. It's not a tangible thing. It's a virtual connection. Okay, but just keep them all together, and you don't even really have to be concerned about it at all. Okay. So let's go back to copy, because that's the one that we're going to want to use. So I do discuss this in the handout if you need to refer to it later. You want to be on the safe side, just do copy. But I like to explain kind of what's going on with that, okay? And then, I know this is a lot of preamble before opening the photos, but you guys don't want to delete your photos, so. All right, over here, don't worry about this too much, but this is also showing you where they're going. There's also tons of cool stuff you can do to your photos as you import them. We're not going to do that right now, but just so you know, cool stuff to look in here in the future. We don't have time for it, unfortunately. So we are going to hit this import button out in the bottom right. Make sure it says copy highlighted. And you don't have to change anything over here. All right, and just hit import.
I don't have an import button. How's that possible?
Well, you may not be on the same screen anymore. You don't have an import button at all? The bottom right?
Oh, way down. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yes, I do indeed.
Okay.
What am I importing it to? Just that drive?
Yeah. I've already got it set up for you, but
Okay.
basically, I'll say one more time, it's real easy, guys. All you have to do is create a file folder. You guys know how to do that, right?
Right.
You're gonna make a folder, okay? When you first start up Lightroom, it's gonna be like, where do I live? That folder. Always put everything in that folder, and you'll be fine. That's all you gotta do.
And so the ones with check marks are the ones that will be copied over, correct?
Yes, sir. Right. Which, of course, you can totally pick and choose, you know. Okay, cool.
One quick thing before
Sure.
we go on.
No, you can.
When we do import them, we go back to the folders that we set up for like if I go in and say I want under File Explorer, I want to have photos and I want subfolders saying December. And when I do all the December photographs, I can import them
Separately.
separately.
You can. And
And
for
it goes into another Lightroom folder, or
yes.
so I don't do anything where my folders are stored at all. When I import them, nothing goes back into those folders. Is that correct?
Assuming that you're kind of transitioning over to Lightroom, correct? Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So eventually, what you would do is once you've actually triple checked that they're all in the new Lightroom location, you would just get rid of the rest or the old ones. You wouldn't need it. They would be your backup. They would be redundant at that point.
We'll get rid of them.
And when you would import them, and see, I'm almost done here, so I'm just kind of waiting. This line here is just showing you your process. You could actually, once you start up Lightroom, import December folder, actually tell it to be the December folder in Lightroom over there as you import it, and then the next folder you would tell it to be a different folder, so you could actually do it as you go.
Okay.
Yeah, and that would be the best way to do it for your situation. Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, we're going to edit some photos now because that's a lot of file management. I know that you guys love that and it's so fun, but no, it's important. It's important. The last thing I would want is to have students go and not understand how the file system works, because without those files and knowing where they are, you don't have any pictures. All right, that's number one most important thing. All right. Okay. Now let me show you a little bit about the interface, and then we'll edit some photos. Okay. So first things first, right? Not the second thing. These here. You see library and develop up there?
Yeah.
Take note. Everybody looking? Everybody.
Okay, I got you. See, I don't have that.
You don't? I think you're still on import or something then.
Right here?
Yeah, see, now it shows up over
Okay, I got you.
Oh. You got them now?
Yeah.
Okay. These are the two modes we're going to talk about today. These other ones, they're not as important, I'll say that. Don't worry about them for right now. They're kind of more like special bells and whistles. These two are the staple, meat and potatoes. These are the important ones, okay? Library is where you're going to look at your pictures, organize your pictures, name your pictures, keyword your pictures, all that stuff that we'll talk about in a minute. Develop, as you might guess, is where you're going to edit your pictures, make them pretty, do all that kind of stuff. Crop, brighten, colorize, all that. Okay, we're going to look at both. So that's up there. Be aware, you can go ahead and switch between the two. They have a different look. They have different menus. They look different. Look at, right? It was just something I was playing with for 3D. So, okay. So we got library and develop, right? Now, let's just quickly take a look at library, if you would, okay? Over here, these are information about organization stuff, and we're going to look at that in a minute. But think of them like folders on your hard drive as well as magical folders that only live inside Lightroom. They're all over here, right? Over here, you've got a lot of information on keywords and metadata, other information about the individual photos. So this is kind of where they are, what their identity is, and this is the specifics of that over here. That's library mode. Library mode is all about organization, cataloging, sorting, all that kind of thing, right? Even culling, which we'll look at in a minute, because first thing I do is get rid of all the bad photos, the worthless ones. There's no sense in having them take up room on your hard drive. And you can't save them all. I guess you could, but really, do you really want like 80,000 black pixels or white pixels? Like, probably not.
I'm already there.
Let go.
But yeah, it's true. I heard someone, it was one of those quotes. It was like, delete 4 out of every 5 of every picture you take or something. But yeah. Okay. So that's library. Develop mode is probably a little more familiar for you guys. Over here on the left, don't worry too much about this for right now, but you've got a whole set of options over here on the right for editing we're going to look at first, right? And another thing to be aware of before we actually get into the editing is down here, there's a strip. Does everybody have the strip? It hides sometimes, so.
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
The strip can hide, and you can make it bigger or smaller if you grab it just in that sweet spot there. The strip is handy. Hit the arrow keys, left and right buttons. You can go through them, all right? Hit the space bar, and you'll get the full scale mode. So there's a
How did you make it bigger again?
space bar.
Facebook?
I hope.
Yeah.
And
Oh, no, I was talking about all of the strip down there.
I just dragged the border.
Oh, okay, I see.
The click, the pull it,
I got you.
stretch it guy.
Yeah.
So spacebar gives you kind of a full screen detail mode, and escape gets you back to the grid. Or you can do it right here. Same thing. I'll let you guys figure out which is which, okay? I think everybody can do that. So there's other stuff. We'll talk about that in a minute, but that's kind of the main viewpoint, if you will, of the program, right? You've got your grid, and then you got your detail view, and you're basically going back and forth between those the whole darn time. Now, one more thing that people like to use. Up at the very top left, do you see the word navigator?
Yes.
Yes.
Open that up if it's not already open. Now that one can be handy. It will show you a little bit bigger picture of the thumbnail. And it depends on how big you have your thumbnails too, because down here, I'm shine a little light on that for you guys. Down here is a slider that you can control how big or small your thumbnails are, depending on what you're doing, right? This might, you might want to see more of the forest or more of the tree, right?
I'm not seeing that.
I
Are
like
you,
that.
are you in library?
You got to be in library mode, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, you gotta be in, yeah, right there.
Oh, that mode,
So
okay.
that's there.
Sorry, I should have mentioned that. I apologize.
Thank you.
Yeah, there are some differences. The grid does not exist inside the edit mode, develop mode, but the strip does. So library is definitely more for the sorting. Of course, they all have a number. It's an arbitrary number, but it's to help us, The file has an actual name, which is that weird number. I'm sure you guys have seen the, random digits assigned to photos. Okay, so that's what I'm going to throw out there in the beginning for you guys, just on the interface, all right? Of course, everything the program can do is somewhere up in these menus, which are so fun, but I'm going to show you, it's also out in here in the form of a button, which is kind of the idea to make it easier to use. So before I go on, any questions? Questions are fine. No? No? Okay. All right then. Let's all pick the same photo. Does everyone have this dark one here?
No.
No.
Okay. That's okay. That's okay. I liked that one because it is a bad photo. Oh, there is a lot to this program, guys. That's what makes it challenging. Let's see here. What's one of these dark ones?
Dark one?
I don't have any of
I
that.
don't have any dark.
I don't have any.
Oh, we're not going to be able to get the same photo, are we? Let's just open one up. Let's just open one up, because this is not going to work. I can tell.
How about your number 6? I think we all have.
This guy?
Yeah, and it's on mine, it's number 3.
Okay.
Okay, so it's, okay.
It's number 4.
Okay, I got it.
Okay, that one works. They can all be edited and played with and stuff. Okay, cool. So if you pick that photo and you go over to develop mode, and of course over here in the strip, you can cycle between photos in develop mode, but you just can't get the grid effect, right? Okay, cool. Now, a little more navigation. Everybody's got that photo?
Yes.
Sweet. All right. Excellent. You can zoom just by click, 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 and if you click and drag, you'll move around. So that's one way you can zoom. You can also drag this bar down here, back and forth. I'm right here. And I know somebody mentioned earlier that, or one of you guys was saying something about how it automatically was lossless or was non-destructive and it just saves your original image.
Right.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It is doing that. That's part of the advantage of having Lightroom import them, because now it's in control. You know what I mean? It's managing it as you use it. Yes, Brenda.
I don't have Zoom. I have all the other buttons, but not Zoom.
Yeah, I don't either.
Well, I don't know.
If you hold your command key, it'll go from your hand tool to the zoom, but how do you zoom more?
More than this?
Click, if you're on your zoom tool, you can click once and it gets so big, but what if you wanna get bigger?
The slider here?
Oh, where's the slider?
Well, if you, for those of you who don't have the slider,
Right.
all right, I want you to look right here. There's a little down arrow, and just click zoom.
Click zoom,
Yeah, just check it,
okay.
and then you will have a slider.
There's a slider?
That is as close.
That's cool.
That's as close in as the program gets. Photoshop can get you a little closer, but when you can actually see the individual pixels, you're pretty close.
That's pretty close.
Pretty close. Too close for comfort. Now, when we go in a second and we look at a lot of the noise reduction stuff and the blurs and all, the things that help smooth it and all of that type of thing, there is a little zoom preview to kind of show you the pixel level, which is really handy. You'll see what I mean in a second. So that's how it looks. Sorry about those of you that don't have the zoom. There's so many options in this thing. I'm telling you.
I thought Photoshop was bad.
It's not bad. I mean, actually, once you learn this,
Complicated.
once you learn this, I think it's fairly smooth. Once you get its its style, once you kind of get familiar with its style. But yeah, it's complicated.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions before we go on? Okay. So, how many of you guys know about clipping? Yeah? So, clipping is a way, well, I think what we're going to use it in is that it's a method that the computer will use to tell you when your pixels are either off the charts bright or off the charts dark. Does that sound right? It's gonna give us a warning. It's not necessarily gonna make or break your photo per se, but it's saying, I don't even know how bright this is because it's more bright. It's brighter than I can. This is like dog level whistle, right? And then also it does the same thing if it's too dark. So let's take a look at that real quick, because you will definitely probably see this in your images. So let's just, for the sake of conversation, overexpose this image real fast. So you see exposure here? We're not going to keep it this way, but let's take the exposure slider and let's just go crazy. And you guys should see some red on your screens.
So where is exposure?
See my laser?
Yes,
That's where it is.
I don't have that.
You will need to open up basic.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want it a little underexposed.
Yeah. In digital, better under than over. I've heard in traditional it was better over and under. Better over than under, but with digital, if it's whited out, it's a lot easier to brighten something than to darken it. That's for sure.
Yeah, too white, you lost a lot of detail.
Yeah. There's nothing there. It's like burning out your retina, staring at the sun, which can ruin your sensor, by the way. That's not a myth.
Personal experience?
Hmm?
Is that personal experience?
No, it's true. No. But if you don't have a proper filter, it can damage it.
There you go.
All right, so is everybody seeing that red?
I'm not, but that's
It
okay.
doesn't look like yours, but,
No, mine is not red.
No red. Okay, so my next question is, if yours is not red, look right here for me on the histogram.
Okay.
You want your little triangle in the top right corner to be highlighted in white.
Ooh. That works.
So click on the triangle.
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, I clicked on mine. Oh, okay. Mine's giving me a little bit of red now. But I have a different picture.
What is that white triangle about? What is that doing?
I will tell you.
Okay.
Does everybody have red now?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. That's your clipping. All right. So by clicking these triangles, and I thought that they were all going to be on by default, by having these turned on, right here.
Now my red is a big splot, and it's not
No,
like
no.
yours.
Yeah, right there.
Oh, that's
Now
interesting.
you gotta take your exposure all the way over.
Okay, so, okay,
Exposure's down one all the way over. Now you got, whoa, you got like a lot.
yeah, okay, I got you.
This is just for example. We're not gonna. Hey guys, this is kind of what you want your photos to look like. Okay, bye. So clipping is your friend, though. All right, I would keep that on. So
Down, take
Exposure
exposure
down.
down.
Right. There you go.
Ah, okay.
Excuse me. Sorry.
clipping is your friend. All right. If you ever see it, you guys don't leave this. Stay tuned to this channel. But I'm gonna pop in something like a photo right from the get-go. Let's see if this has some clipping. It doesn't, but it does there a little bit. So it's your friend. It's just telling you that it's too bright. We'll just put it that way. It's just more complex than that, but just to keep it simple, it's telling you that it's too bright. And you don't want it to be too bright. It's telling you this could look better if you didn't have it as bright, right? The opposite is also true when you see the blue. It was harder for me to get that. There's some, okay? Obviously the photo is destroyed at this point, but what you'll often encounter is it'll just be one or two photos that'll have just a little patch. It's usually a sun glare, like a reflection of the sun. And in some of those cases, it's okay to leave it clippy. But you just want to check and make sure. Usually, though, the photo will look terrible already to your eye before it's an issue. But just so you know, if you ever do see that red, okay, that means you want to dim it down a little bit, right? Okay? That's really all there is to it. It's not super complex. It's actually pretty simple. Any questions on clipping? Now. No questions? Okay. It's based on your histogram, too. It has nothing to do with what your photo looks like. In fact, believe it or not, the computer doesn't care what your picture is. It has no idea what it's looking at. Even the facial recognition, it's still just thinking about math. It didn't know it's your face. It just knows it looks like that face. So it's just looking at a bunch of squares, looking at a bunch of pixels. It does graph them, though. Have you guys ever looked into histograms before?
So, just,
Histograms are important. Look in your histogram in your camera while you're out taking pictures. Make sure you get a proper exposure. But that's a whole class in and of itself. But you do have a histogram up here, right? And has anybody never seen a histogram before? It's just a graph that measures, it's measuring the value of your pixels. Like which ones are worth a lot, which ones aren't worth much. I'm kidding. Not that kind of value. It's measuring so left to right is brightness, darkness, right? So the leftmost on the x-axis is black. And the rightmost on the x-axis is white. Frequency is your y-axis, right? Usually you want it to kind of look like a hill. But that's not saying much because it completely depends on what you're taking a picture of as to what a good histogram looks like. There's really no correct answer for what's a good histogram look like? Well, it depends. You know, it's like, what's a good workout routine look like? Depends who you are. So, but be aware of it. I can just quickly, it'd be worth your time, just 1 second, let me go off on a tangent and show you why it can be a good idea to look in it. Because it's something that you can fix while you're out taking pictures if you check. Okay, see these peaks? That's the black, obviously. See this peak? It's all that. See that little bitty peak? Guess what? It's that white. Sometimes you can see it easily, right? And like I said, you could teach a whole class on this, because there is definitely this is mixing science in with art. So you can see here, too much to the left, here, too much to the right. This is a good balance. Just a little bit of info on that, hopefully to get y'all interested. But check out histograms. Again, you know, with modern cameras and auto mode and all that, they're not as big a deal, but they are worth knowing about. All right, so that shows you clipping, just in case. Now we're ready to edit. Now, here is where, when you're editing down here with just the basic edits, folks, salt this to taste, okay? There's no right or way to do this, right or wrong way to do this. This is up to you and your aesthetic. But I will show you the different adjustments that you can make, and then you can go from there. Don't turn it black and white right now. So that's the first thing. There is an auto, but I don't want you to click that yet. However, that is not a bad idea to click it just to see what the computer will do, and then you can go back and, you know, do your own way based on that information that you've gathered there. White balance. Okay, everybody know what white balance is?
Would you explain it?
Of course. I was just curious if you guys have heard of it before.
Oh yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah, but it's confusing.
It's just the tint of your whites. So it's what flavor of white you have. And I think everyone can relate to it, because have you ever painted a white wall before? And have you ever noticed that it didn't look the same as the other white paint that you were painting over the old white paint wall? It's that exact principle. And as you can see, different lights have different spectrums. So that's got a lot to do with it. Incandescent, fluorescent, power compact, metal halide, sunlight, flash, all kinds of cool stuff. And you have to work with that if that's your light source, and you have to also compensate with that sometimes, right? There's usually, there's almost always a setting on your camera for it, and I typically use auto. Or, say if you're shooting outside in daylight, I just tell it that. I tell it I'm shooting sunlit. But you have another option later when you're in development mode to work on that as well, and it's temperature and tint. These are more photography related terms and operations. You can do this kind of stuff in Photoshop, but it works a little differently. It's like hue saturation and that type of thing with sliders. So temp is green and blue. Again, just do this till you're happy with how it looks. You can do this a lot more complicated ways, more precise and direct ways. This is more of a global effect. It's going to affect every pixel in there a little bit at least. It may affect the blue ones more if you tilt it to blue, but it's going to affect everything. There's other ways where you can only affect one temperature of color, but this is the basic simple one. And tint is red-green. You remember that knob on your old TV set? I used to really drive my dad crazy and make all the basketball players green. Anybody ever do that? Yeah. So that's what that's about. Okay. So what I did, I tilted it a little more blue to make my sky a little prettier, a little more blue. And notice that it affects the histogram up here. This histogram, a lot of histograms are monochromatic. So they're looking at it in black and white. They don't care about color. They're looking at grayscale, differences between brights and darks. But this one shows you color. So I brightened my blues by bringing them out. See that? My blues were darker, and then I brightened them. I didn't necessarily increase them. I actually decreased them, but I brightened them. It's funny how that stuff works. There are some presets here. So do you see that little menu next to the WB right here? Yeah, they're presets. There's an auto. So if I click auto, no. It doesn't know. But it's fun to check. Oops, I did not mean to do that. Let's see. Let's see, daylight. Daylight's okay. Daylight's actually pretty close. So, a lot of information is contained inside your photograph file, especially if you're shooting in RAW. And let me ask, how many of you guys are shooting in RAW? Is anybody not shooting in RAW?
What do you mean in RAW?
RAW file type? You don't shoot in RAW, Brenda?
I
It's
don't know.
RAW is uncompressed raster image.
Oh,
So it's full res. Whereas a JPEG does have a compression operation performed on it of various degrees of loss.
Mine, I shoot
Lossiness.
a preset, whatever was on there. Whatever
Okay.
the default is.
It's in your menu mode. There's some advantages to shooting in RAW. If you can shoot in RAW, I would, but that's just
Does that make any difference in how you do the post-production here?
not in how you do it, but in how many options you have. Yes.
Does it recognize RAW? When you,
Oh yeah. Oh
You
yeah.
didn't have to tell it.
But you can still do JPEGs in here just fine.
So if you import a JPEG, Lightroom knows you're using the JPEG.
Right. You can make any RAW file into a JPEG, but you can't go the other way. Yeah. You can't ever add detail unless you want to start painting. You can only go down. But yes, RAW files give you benefits in here. But the things that we're learning today, I think that you would be able to use those pretty much any photo. All right, so let's keep moving down here. Tone, and we already looked at exposure here. This is your brightness, darkness group here. And these guys are very handy, all right? And I think when we get to some photos with some more shadows in them, these will be even more interesting for you guys. I think exposure makes pretty good sense, right? This is globally affecting how bright or dark your pixels are. It's just multiplying them by a ratio. It's multiplying every single one of them by a ratio, right? So if I went here to 2, it's taking how bright they were and doubling it, roughly, I think. Again, though, just adjust that to your taste. However, contrast is not how bright or dark they are, but it works more in the midtones. How similar are the midtones, right? Watch what it does to your histogram when you change these. That one does the electric slide, whereas this one brings everybody together. Makes sense, right? Only a little contrast? Similar, close. Lots of contrast? You're not the same as you, right? But again, just do this, make it look, how you like it. And I'm going to keep going. Now is where it gets fun. And actually, these guys I would do last or towards the end, or don't set them in stone until you do these other ones. Has anyone in here played with the more specific ones that are down there? Highlight, shadows, whites, and blacks?
I did a little.
They're handy
Yes.
because they pinpoint specific zones of the histogram rather than the whole at large. So highlights and shadows, if you look up here and you hover your mouse over your histogram, do you see how it kind of highlights in gray these different sectors?
Yes.
Okay, good. The middle, that's your midtones. And then to the left of the midtones is shadows, to the right of the midtones is highlights. And now they've added another one in recently. That's the whites and the blacks, which are the extreme brights and darks. And it allows you to brighten or darken those more specifically. It can still affect other parts of your photo, but it's going for those specifically. So what that means in your photo, if you're just adjusting this part, say the shadows, then I'm going just for the dark areas. So just to give you an idea, let me brighten up my shadows, and what that's going to help me do is brighten up the dark areas. If I brighten up my shadows and my blacks a little bit, it brightens up the dark areas without blowing out the white. To get the equivalent brightness in my dark areas, if I just use exposure, it would have also brightened up my light areas, which I don't need to do, therefore ruining it. And we'll do this a couple more times, and it'll make, I guarantee you it'll make sense at the end, if it doesn't yet. Okay, so you can also use that with your bright areas. So like, I don't want to brighten my whites, obviously. That's bad. Now see, that's bad. If my clipping's off, check this out, guys. Well, yeah, I've seen better, right? But when you turn that on, it's like, oh yeah, that's not, you're. And in that case, we had detail, but we killed it. Which, again, you know, it's kind of like chopping off, I don't know. It's you want to measure twice, cut once, right? So don't start too bright or too dark. It's good to start from kind of somewhere in the middle. Is that making sense for everybody? Sort of, kind of. You'll find it's very useful because a lot of times you need to brighten up a dark area without also brightening a light area, or vice versa. You need to darken brights without darkening your shadows. That's what it's for, basically. Instead of brightening or darkening everything, you can decide which one you want to kind of bring it to parity with, you know, lowest common denominator kind of thing, okay? And by the way, you guys are doing an excellent job. Any questions? And feel free to ask as many as you need to. I won't kick you guys out at noon if you've got questions and stuff, so. Okay. Moving on, it gets a little more interesting. Presence is basically color. So you remember your color mode on your TV? Again, something you could help with making the basketball players green. That's essentially what this is. So vibrance and saturation are your main two. And you can go ahead and slide those and you'll see what happens. You know, if you go all the way to the left with both of them, you get black and white. Now, what's the difference between the two? The answer is I don't know exactly mathematically. I know that saturation is stronger than vibrance. It's going to tilt it more extreme. for every notch over, okay? Any questions on that? Now, when you get into, oh, did you have a question?
No, I was falling out of chairs.
Oh gosh,
I just tilted back.
they do that. I'm sorry. Yeah, I zoomed in and
Trying to get comfortable.
yeah, I noticed I had a little bit of clipping there. So to practice what I preach, I need to tone down some of that brightness a little bit, maybe. When you affect the colors, you can get that. That's another reason why I like to keep that clipping on, because you can do thing Z and affect thing A again, okay? Sometimes you'll have a photo where you're just going to have clipping. So I'm actually fighting it right here. And if it ruins your photo to get rid of the clipping, don't worry about the clipping. You know, you just kind of gotta, don't throw the baby out with bathwater kind of thing. Now, the reason I zoomed in here, and you guys can do that too, is that dehaze and clarity are gonna greatly affect sort of the grain. And I wouldn't recommend using these a lot, because as you can see, when you start going very far in either direction, it does kind of tend to make your photo weird. But if you are going to use these, I would definitely zoom in and just double check it, you know, kind of what it's going to be doing to your picture. It can be easy to see in extremes when you're zoomed out, but when you're not zoomed in, sometimes you can't really see some of the odd things that it's doing. It's kind of like a surface blur in Photoshop, okay? That actually looks kind of cool. It's sort of like a poor man's HDR. No, it's not really, but it has some similarities in how it looks. And from here on out, we're going to get even more specifically into blurs and sharpens. Okay. Any questions on the color? This is mainly use this presence portion to work with your color, and then secondarily clarity and dehaze. More than anything, just get in and play around. You got nothing to lose but time and brain cells and stuff. So. Okay, curves. Who in here knows curves? Okay, good. I don't, so we're gonna just bypass those. We are, you know, I get them, but not well enough to teach it, if that makes sense.
The levels pretty much does the same thing without all the complications.
You're right. Yes. It's basically, excuse me, you're absolutely right. It's like the things we were just doing with the blacks, shadows, midtones, highlights, whites. It's similar in curves with one exception. It's algorithmic equation versus just like a slope. It's a curving slope instead of a straight slope. That's the only difference. So it's like,
levels, you just take your black point and decide where you want your blackest point to be, and then you decide what your best white point is, and you're done.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
But, you know, that's why I'm here. I don't even see levels in Lightroom.
We just did the levels. They're not in there. They're in there under a different name.
Levels panel I'm talking about in Photoshop.
Yep, that's what we just talked about. It's not called the same thing, but what we just did is levels.
I mean, it doesn't have that easy, you know, here's the black point, here's the white point.
It shows it to you in a different way,
Well, maybe that's what
but that's what the
Oh,
histogram.
I see.
It's just the
That here, I just found it.
yeah,
It's at the top.
but the histogram is kind of showing you the same thing. It's the same thing. It's just a different interface, is what it is. You know.
I guess that wasn't it after all.
But it's what this right here. tone, that's levels. That's
Yeah,
level.
what is that little thing,
It's
next to WB for white balance? What is that little?
This? Oh, that's more for your white point though.
Oh, okay.
That picks what you want your white point to be. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's nice. Oh,
Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is essentially levels.
I guess that would make sense in the white balance box for it to be white point.
Yep.
Oh man.
So going down here, yeah, and curves are just logarithmic, but we're not going to get into those just because unfortunately, I'm not up to speed on them. Come on, mouse. Where did you go? Okay, I'm going to need my mouse. What the heck happened here? Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay, now it's back. Now it's gone again. Oh, I had to click. Okay. So, no curves for today. But we're doing all the same kind of changes. It's just a different way to use a slider. Okay? So, now, HSL color, this is specific adjustments to colors. Okay? This is getting more advanced. But we'll talk about it. So, reds and blues are going to be the ones that are going to affect most of us. If you guys are on the same picture, they're going to be your main two, okay? And what this does is some of the same adjustments we've been making earlier on the whole photo, on every pixel in the photo, this is going to apply those mostly to specific color sets. As you can see here, the list, all right? So hue in the classic color spectrum, okay? Digital color is cubic, okay? And it is based on hue, saturation, and brightness. So I want to show you something interesting. Oh, I know what I need to do. RGB. So RGB, red, green, and blue. How do you get yellow out of that? Well, this is how, I guess. So this is an image that might help you visualize how digital color works. When we think of color, we probably think of like a wheel, a color wheel, maybe Roy G. Biv, something like that. That ain't how a computer sees color. Computer sees color in a cube. So it's not just XY, it's XYZ. So your color is floating around somewhere in here. So you should keep that in mind. When you're adjusting colors, that's why you have these three groups of options, because you're moving your color around in this box in three different ways. It's not an up, down, left, right. It's that and then another dimension, okay? So, hue's pretty easy. Hue is just the flavor of the color of the rainbow. Roy G. Biv. Is it orange, red, green? So, when you shift the reds, if I drag this red right here, I can make it more cooler, like a pinker red, cool it down. I can make it hotter, warmer, and now I've essentially changed it into an orange. I want you guys to try that too. Notice how it didn't affect the other colors much, if at all, did it? But it is going to affect all the red in your photo. To only affect that one plane's wing, we would have had to mask it, but that's a different thing. Everybody see how that worked?
Before I forget, can I ask kind of an unrelated question?
Yeah, you can ask any question.
Are you able to select in Lightroom? Like, if you wanted to select that from one wing, do you have to mask it, or can you select it, or?
You can, yeah.
It doesn't have like a selection tool or something like that.
It does. You ever use Camera Raw?
Yeah.
It's got that. It has that. It has Camera Raw style of selection tools, not Photoshop's. It doesn't have the Photoshop selection tools, if that's what you
Wait,
were curious.
This is a program called RAW? I don't often shoot in RAW, just because it takes so much space, I don't need to, but.
There is a plugin. There was a plugin called Camera Raw for RAW files, and Adobe acquired it and put it in all Photoshop. So if you open a RAW file with Photoshop and you have it on default settings, it'll open it first in Adobe Camera Raw, and then you can open it in Photoshop. And Adobe Camera Raw is basically all this stuff we're doing today.
Okay.
So you do have a selection brush kind of thing, which if I have time, I'll show you guys. If you really want to do a lot of selections, though, I would do Photoshop. But yeah, you can kind of do that. But for an airplane wing, I would say Photoshop. If it was just like slightly changing the cheek color on somebody, I would say yeah, just fine in Lightroom. You know,
I didn't mean to get off topic, don't take up everybody's time.
it's okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Question, once you do all the sliding and adjusting on any of these, how do you get it to go back to the default?
That would be.
Slides? Without, because when you try to slide it, it gets larger increments. How do you go back to the original?
I'll show you.
Okay.
Look over on your left.
Okay.
Well, there's one way to completely reset it, but let me show you the history here. If you go back over here to the left, where it says history,
Yeah.
and you drop that down, every darn thing you did is listed on here. So at the bottom, see where it says import? That should be what it looked like when you first pulled it in. So that's one way.
What if you just wanted to do
Do
like?
you delete all of the other changes?
If you start doing other changes, and it's the same way as the history window in Photoshop, if you go back and then you start doing different stuff, you've erased the other timeline. So think like Star Trek, you know, like butterfly effect and all.
No, I mean like if you go on here and you're on import, you still have all of your other ones there. Is there any way to take those off?
What do you mean other ones?
Like the aqua change, the green change, the orange change, the blue change, all the changes that you just made to your picture.
Doesn't work like that. It's once you go back, like if I went back to here, if I went back to that point, and then I start doing other things, I think, let me just test it, but I think it's going to erase all the, yeah, see?
Okay.
That's all gone forever now. So,
Gotcha.
you know, you can go back, no problem, but once you like once you go back and then start doing different stuff, everything past that's history. So,
Well, that's sort of like
I
what
got you.
I was asking, but over here on the right, when you do the developing, like I'm right now, highlight Q, how do I reset to 0?
oh, that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. There is a way. Hold on.
Well, at the
You
far
can
right of each
double-click
of
on
those
the slider.
sliders, you can just
Oh, okay.
Oh,
double click the 0 and or the.
Oh, yeah.
Take it back to 0.
Yeah, that's true. You could do that.
okay, double click it and just type in 0.
Sometimes they have like a reset button, but
I got you. Okay.
I'm sure there is a command somewhere that'll do it. You can also turn them off. They have this little knob on the left side that you can turn them on and off as well. There is a way to reset edits, but clear history, set default setting.
At the very bottom, there's a reset previous, because you.
Oh yeah. Sorry, what were you? I didn't mean to interrupt.
Just would that reset it to the beginning?
Yeah, reset would. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It did. Oh, it did like kind of check my. It kind of made my computer think, but yes. Mm-hmm.
Are your history steps infinite in Lightroom?
I don't know.
I don't either. I mean, yeah, I don't know about Photoshop either. 'cause
Oh,
I'm
they're
not sure.
definitely not infinite. No.
Yeah, because you would get to like 50 steps and then you can't
Yeah,
go back any farther.
I think the default's 50 or 100. Yeah.
Okay.
You can play with that, and I know you can change that in Photoshop. It's in the
It seems
preferences.
like an awful lot of
I mean, if you want to. You can do something called creating a snapshot.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
It's like a semi-save. So,
I forgot about that.
yeah. Actually, you can just, let's see, up here under Develop, I think there's probably a button for it, but up here under Develop, I know you can go down here and you could say New Snapshot, and then that's sort of like a semi-save.
So
Where did you
everything
go?
you've done up until this point will be saved once you
The
do
top
that. And
menu,
then if you want to go back to that,
Develop.
gotcha.
That's the way you kind of like work around for this method.
Okay.
See what it
Like, you
says,
wouldn't
new
have lost
snapshot,
everything
new
to
snapshot,
that point, if that makes sense.
Yes.
new
Yeah.
snapshot.
You could always go back to that version. So it's also good for doing versions like, hey, maybe I want this more red looking one, this more blue looking one, and in a minute I'll show you how you can even get both of them up there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow.
In fact, now I think we can get through these here in a second, and we can. I'll show you how to do that. It's pretty cool. So anyway, so you can affect the hue of the colors. You can affect the saturation of the colors. Do I want a ton of red? Do I want my red to not exist? Right? So in this case, something that might make it look cool is to make the blue deeper. And I want to make the blue deeper without, let me back up here. Yeah. I want to make the blue deeper without completely blowing out everything, right? And then luminance is brightness. Luminance is how much black or white is mixed in with the color. How pure it is, right? Purity. Because if we don't see the world the same way, rather, the way things look to our eye or to a machine like a camera are not very often extreme pigments, okay? So you take any picture in the, just about any picture, and I'm going to put it in Photoshop because it's easier to show you here. Okay, I'm done. Any picture that you've ever seen. So here's the color picker, right? And this is Photoshop. Just I'm on a tangent here for just a minute, so bear with me. Remember that book that I showed you a minute ago, the cube, how it sees color in a cube? Okay. This is the hue strip, and then this is my up, down, left, right, and then this is my back and forth. Again, think of this as a cube. You're inside this cube somewhere. And up here in the top right, that's like if you turn your vibrance or your saturation all the way to the max, okay? So up here, that's extreme pigment. Like, that's not a very realistic color, okay? We don't see these in the world very often. Every Van Gogh painting, it's got color real blown out, right? Unless you're at the circus or something, you're not going to see those very often. And another way you can test for that is with your eyedropper tool, which whatever pixel I hit, it's going to pick that color for me, all right? So if I grab that one, where is that? It's over here. It's mixed with a lot of white and black, okay? Maybe the brightest color I have on here is that red. It isn't up here. It's mixed with some white and some black. So the world is shades of gray, guys. It really is.
18%.
Yeah. So it's yeah, just a little tangent there for you. So most of colors are kind of muted and stuff, but that's what makes it interesting, believe it or not. So that's how you pinpoint color families. Okay, I'm going to collapse that. Detail, we're going to skip down to detail, and detail is very useful. Sometimes it's nice to be zoomed in on it a little bit. Whoops. Okay, and in detail, that is sharpening and smoothing or blur. Now, check this out. I don't know if it's largely popular or not, but for me, I use both. I sharpen it some and I blur it some. Okay? I sharpen my important edges, and then I blur my any grainy stuff or any edges that I don't want to appear, right? Of course, it depends on the photo, but they teach us this in painting. Edges are super important. Edges are huge, whether they're hard or soft, right? So this little window here, this little zoomed window here shows you a detail setting, and then you can click this little guy here in the top left, and then click anywhere in your photo and it'll show you a detail. And the reason why that's handy is you'll be able to see there's a lot of grain and stuff going on in there, and you may just want to zoom in real far, because as you'll see when we start dragging these sliders, it's going to really affect how all that stuff looks. So obviously you don't want to sharpen it. That looks terrible. But I'm going to leave that kind of in the middle for right now. These other settings are going to be related to how the pixel relationships are in the sharpening. It's essentially how strong that they're going to be. So left is weaker, right is stronger, right? So you may want it a little sharp. Now here's what you don't want. You see that? Those are called, you might know. Well, yes, but what is wrong with these pixels over here? They're not happy, are they? Oh man, that's like antibodies or something.
It's the helicopter blade turning, showing motion.
No. These don't exist in the picture. These are not real. They're not really there. Yes, that's the word. They're artifacts. You know, like Indiana Jones? No, I'm kidding. They're anomalies of computers. They're not really in your picture. There's another thing called rolling shutter that you might have seen before. So there's two. It's important for you guys to know this, even though this isn't Lightroom specific. It's a phenomenon that happens because of pixels. And the way a computer sees the world, what did I do? Go in here. There's a way that the computer sees the world is in pixels. And it's looking in the top left, moving to the right, going down a row. It's like we read. It looks at it like we read. And when it does that, there's some serious artifacts. When it does that, it does it in a certain way. Here you go. And compression is the worst, because this is why you don't want to shoot in JPEG probably. It would never be this bad, but trust me, just shoot in RAW. With compression, it looks at one pixel and it's like, well, these 7 around it look a lot like it, or these 8 around it look a lot like it. Why don't we just make them all the same? So it's making bigger squares out of little squares over and over and over, and that's where you get this weird stuff like this. Now, ours is not extreme, but it's the same problem happening. So it's just something to run out for. Now, it can be a cool looking effect, right? But it's because of the edge there is what's causing it here. So what we want to do is we want to make the edge exist and have some identity, but we don't want it to look too messy. Well, I'm just saying the average Joe, probably wouldn't want to. So if I don't sharpen it very much, and then down here on noise reduction, okay, noise reduction is going to kill all that. Ooh, see, look, nice and smooth now. I know it's harder for you guys to see, but hopefully you can see it on your screens. Is that working for you guys okay?
I can see.
There's a balance though, right? You don't want it, or you probably don't want it completely smoothed out, because then it's blurry. Then it looks too fuzzy, right? Like if it's real blurred up, it's your call, it's your photo, but I wouldn't want it too blurry. I mean, it looks okay, but yeah, that's a little blurrier than I would want it. That's me. And this is actually kind of one of the more challenging and critical steps in a photo. All right, you don't have to mess with this, but sometimes it's nice, especially for long distance zoomy shots. So it's kind of easier to see them on the aircraft. Any questions on those? It's a balance, you know. So I use both. No questions at all? Okay. You guys are quiet now. Look, there's even sort of a lost edge right there. That's called a lost edge. It's not missing. It's not missing. It's there's still matter there, but it's just the same color as the sky. All right. So the rest of these things we're going to kind of skip over today because they're cool, but we don't have time for them. They're not as, I guess, critical to know. I do want to show you something else though. Let's go ahead and go to a different photo. And you guys can pick any photo that you want because I think just about every photo in here can be helped, including a fish. Try to pick one that looks too bright or too dark. If you have fish, there's a lot of those. It's like, say, this one. It's a little blurry. And so what we'll do here, oh, sir, make sure you put the doorstop there so it doesn't lock you out. There's a doorstop right there by the wall, to your right.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So down here, these are pretty cool. There's a RA and a YY. So the first one we're not going to use, but the second one I want to show you, if you do a before, after, left, right, which is the first one, or just click it, click that first one. Then when you go in here and you start doing more editing,
that's cool.
right? So you can kind of see what you've changed.
Yeah.
And this is kind of similar to doing that, what do they call it again? Where you do the semi-save. Snapshot. It's kind of like a snapshot, sort of the same principle. If you want to say, hey, I'm happy with this is good, let's just go ahead and call this the new normal, right? Then you would hit this button here, and you can see which way the arrow is. Then you say, okay, staying here, save point, going on. Now I'm going to keep changing it some more from there. Does that make sense? I can show you all again if you want. So let's say I'm going crazy over here, right? Okay, I want to keep this. This is what I want it to look like. So I don't need to see that one anymore. I want to take this and then kind of further adjust from there. So if I hit this button, it's going to say, this guy's the new normal. And then I can come back over here and, you know, do more crazy stuff.
That's super cool.
Yeah. It's called sometimes 2-up, but it's completely before and after referencing. So you can see what you've changed, but potentially you could have two versions to compare as well. And that's also what the reference is. So with the reference, I could pick any other photo and have it to compare. If I want to get them the same temperature, if I want to get them the same brightness, kind of see where I'm going with that? Cool stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, you guys were kind of guinea pigs because I have in the past, and if you look through the handout later after class, you'll see there's tons and tons of stuff about cataloging. That's over here in the library mode. I have taught it that way before. I think definitely the first few times. Okay, and we spend the whole 2 hours talking about that, and we don't even get to the editing stuff. So, you guys, I went to the editing first and foremost. But
It sounds like this could be like 3 classes.
there's a lot to it.
I was gonna ask you about cataloging, that's
Yep.
been my
We'll talk about that till the.
frustration to learning Lightroom on my own, for some reason I didn't get it.
I'll show you. But for now, we're going to have to wrap up on developing. So, any other questions on developing? I think.
Well,
Yeah.
Oh no, I'll take all. feel like the president here or something. Okay. Yes. It was good.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'm wondering if there is a quick way for you to explain how to take a black and white photo and just add a spot of color on a particular item. You know, where you've seen black and white photos and then there's a red apple.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a quick way to explain how to do that?
There's not.
No.
Well,
Okay.
usually they
I-
do
I'm-
a picture in color and then select the apple and then desaturate the rest of it.
Okay,
I mean, I could definitely explain it, but it's a lot of steps.
okay.
I don't know if you can do it in Lightroom.
It's not hard.
But
You can. It's not hard, but it would take like 15 minutes.
Okay, we won't go there.
It involves that selection brush that you asked about earlier.
Mhm.
And if you want to know,
I do.
these are your selection brushes. Okay, I'm not gonna. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go into all of them, but this is where you crop and where you. I might be able to come back to this at the very end. So,
Okay,
because I would like to show you guys that, but I need to show you some cataloging stuff just to round it out a little bit. Okay, you had a question?
yeah, it's like, okay, so you get done with your picture, and you've made all kinds of adjustments to it, and let's just say you don't want to, or if you go to save it, does it save on your SD card? Does it save on your hard drive?
Saves where your Lightroom catalog is, so that would be your hard drive, most cases. Yes. It's always auto-saving all the time, wherever you
So
have.
it doesn't alter on your SD card at all?
Huh?
It doesn't alter on your SD card?
No.
And then my other question is okay, however you were saying, you should be deleting like 4 out of 5 pictures.
Oh, that's just what some dudes
Well,
say.
I understand that, but how do you delete, like, I know how to do it on my laptop, but not on these computers here. It's like, I can't figure out how to delete.
Okay, yeah, we can look at that. And to get your photos out, so to have an addendum to your question, you could export them. And then they can go to your SD card, they can go anywhere. They're outside of the Lightroom. The photo's still in Lightroom and it's had babies outside of Lightroom.
I understand.
So that would be how to get it on your SD card if you wanted to. And you had a question, sir?
The term at the bottom left, there's a salt called soft proofing.
Mm-hmm.
What is that, dude?
You know, I don't know.
Okay.
I have a suspicion, though, that it has something to do with the preview that it shows you. Because I remember, I'd have to double check on that, but I know that they used to have like a JPEG auto preview, something that you would check in Camera Raw. But I would have to double check. I have seen it though.
Okay.
I think it has to do with the rendering. Well, it's adding it creates a copy. Oh, hey, check it out. It does. It gives you another. Not only does it kind of give you a snapshot, but it gives you a whole other file. It looks like kind of connected together. It looks like they might be stacked,
Okay.
which we might be able to get into stacking. That's a good question, though. Does it die? No, it doesn't die when you turn it off. Okay.
Well, I just Googled it. It says it shows you how it will look when printed.
Mm-hmm. That would make sense. But of course, it would have to know what printer, I think.
Okay.
Well, maybe it wouldn't have to, but I think accuracy would.
Just
Yeah.
gives you a better idea of what it
Uh-huh.
looks like. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, any other questions?
Are you gonna cover a red eye removal? I know that's basic, but I wanna know how to do it in Lightroom if you have time at the end.
Well, I'll need to grab a photo with red eye in it, but I can. Yes, it's super. That one's pretty darn simple. Okay, let's talk cataloging real quick, and then we'll get back to some of the requests. Okay. So let's all switch back over to the library, please. And now that we're in library mode, let's go to the grid. We're going to be spending a lot of time in the grid. So remember, grid is that button or escape. Okay. Now, this is cataloging. I'm going to have to go kind of quick. So if I go too fast, just raise your hand. Just tell me. I will slow down for you, okay? All right. So we got to make up some arbitrary groups. So we can all recognize the helicopter, right?
Yes.
So what I want you all to do, there's a couple different ways to select. I think you mostly are familiar with how you can click one and then hold down Shift and continue clicking. Or if you hold down the command button with your other hand, then you can click and unclick anywhere on any photos. You can select or unselect them. So this is just a little bit about how to select them. All right, so if you could select all the helicopters that you can see and not any other photos, there should be 7 of them, I think.
Yes.
And of course, they highlight when they're selected. Okay, everybody got that so far? All right. Now, you can do a lot of things with what you've got selected. So, you know, we have this group of photos now. We just need to tell Lightroom what we want to say about them, do with them, all that kind of thing. So, for right now, what we're going to do is open up your little collections tab over here on the left. This is where your collections live. And there's this little button right here. In the top right, a little plus. Click that. And then you want to click Create Collection. So let's talk real quick about what is a collection. A collection is essentially a folder with some smartish properties, but it only lives in Lightroom. It's not something you're going to find on your hard drive while Lightroom's off. It's a folder inside of the Lightroom world, okay? But it works very much like a folder to help you organize your photos. So we'll go up here and name it Helicopters. And don't worry about these other ones inside a collection set, but I do want you to click Include Selected Photos because we've already decided what's going to go in there. Okay. And then click Create. Now where it said Create inside another set, of course you can have collections within collections within collections forever, right? And now, check this out. Over here, this is showing you what group of things that you have open, okay? I want you to open up the catalog real quick for me at the top. So you'll have catalog and collections open together. Everybody with me so far?
Yes.
All right. And then click on all photographs at the top. Now you're back to where we just were, hopefully.
Right.
But now that you've set these aside and you've kind of segregated them from the rest of the photos, you can always go down here to helicopters, and then you're just going to see your helicopters. They're all in the same spot physically. Well, you know what I mean. Like file-wise, they're all still in the same spot, but they're just represented in different places. Technically, the helicopters are in both. They're in all and they're in helicopters. And there's a lot of that in Lightroom. There's a lot of both kind of stuff. Yeah,
Just a quick question.
Mhm.
It said inside a collection. Let's say I went to the Date Air show.
yeah, me too.
All right.
Yeah,
Could I
definitely.
have created something that says Date Air show, Blue Angels,
Oh, yeah.
F22 rep, so on and so forth, and it would put all of those photos in there, and it would show up like this one here.
Yes. So you could have,
Sort of like a file explorer.
exactly.
Okay.
You have the Dayton collection, and then inside that you can have separate collections, and they're in both.
Okay.
In both
If that makes sense.
catalogs and collections.
Well, they're in the parent collection and in their own collection.
Okay.
Yeah, any of the higher up hierarchy, they're in that too. Yeah, and because they're all in all photos. Yeah, that's your ultimate collection. Right?
You have subfolders?
That's kind of what they are. Yeah, but yes, you can. You can.
You know, I'm old school, so I would copy
can.
all of my photos into File Explorer in Windows, and have that already set up, segregated where I wanted to work on Raptors or something like that. I could import that group of photos.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. You'd have to kind of retroactively do it.
But I would do it. What I would do, I would take my SD card, copy them all,
Mhm.
and just copy. Set up the folders
Yeah.
anyway.
You just have to kind of remap the folders, and then it wouldn't be that much work. The other thing about once you started your system and you stick with it, it's less work all the time. In the beginning, it's like you got to create all that up, but later you're just like, okay, that'll go there, that'll go there, that'll go there. I have my aviation collection, and then I've got all the dates in there. Just however you want to set it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I like to have all my photos because they're backed up automatically 3 or 4 different times. Because I'm just kind of anal about that.
Mm-hmm.
So I have them all on my computer, so I won't lose them.
Yep, you could transpose that right over. Yep. You'll just do that in your import. Remind me to show you that if I forget. Remind me to show you how you can preset. You can have them go into a collection on import.
Okay.
You can, that you could save yourself a step there. So let's go ahead and do another one to show the subfolder. So we'll do, essentially this is going to be a subfolder, Brenda. If we go back to, let's say we go to the helicopter, I've got 2 with smoke. So inside just the helicopters collection, let me highlight, actually, let's not highlight them yet. We'll do it the other way. So you can either pick your photos first and then make the folder, or you can make the folder and then pick the photos. Let's do it the other way. So over here in helicopters, or actually over here in collections, let's just click the plus sign again. And then let's do create collection. And then, actually, I apologize. Let's hit cancel. Let's hit cancel for now. We have to do something else. I'm sorry, guys. Let's hit the little plus button. It is a little bit different. Let's hit create a collection set. That's your bigger folder. My apologies. I had forgotten about that. So the collection set, we'll just call this aircraft.
Okay.
And then we'll hit create. And it's got more of like a bin kind of picture. There's nothing in it yet, but I'll show you what we can do. See your helicopters bar down here, okay? So we have, everybody should have an aircraft set and then a helicopters collection. We're gonna drag that into the aircraft set. So I'm just gonna click, hold, and let go right there. And now it's inside it.
That's cool.
And you can do that on through the ages. So we'll do the smoke now. So click that button again, the create button, the plus, create collection, inside a collection set aircraft. We're going to call this smoke. And then we don't have to include selected photos for now. We're going to do it a different way. And we're just going to hit create. So now it's inside aircraft 2. Technically it should be inside helicopters, but it doesn't matter that much right now.
We can always drag it, right?
You'd have to kind of, yeah.
Drag smoke in the helicopter?
I don't know that it works that way, actually. I think you might have to make a set, and then you might have to like kind of convert it to a set.
Yeah, that's not.
But you could do that. But within helicopters, if we want to separate out the smoky ones, you can simply do it this way. You can click on the thumbnail and then drag it over top the word smoke, let go, and it'll drop it right in there. To take them out, though, no, not like that way. There is a way. How do you do that?
What if you open helicopters and then hit collections? What is a smart collection versus a collection?
I will show you if we have time.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty cool. It typically works with keywords and stuff. Let's see. Well,
Hey, if you right click on helicopters, you get that same choice to create a collection.
mm-hmm.
Can we do it that way?
If you want. I'm going to show you something entirely different real quick, though.
Oh.
Just bear with me. Okay, take me back to my grid. Go back to all photos, back to your grid. And we may not have time for keywords, but we're definitely going to have time for flagging, all right? Now, the way I like to do flagging, actually, is not on the grid. It's in the loop mode. And then I use the strip down here to go left and right. Cycle through, okay? And here's all we're trying to do. We're trying to find the keepers from the stuff we're going to cut and delete. So there's 2 flags that you can put on those. There's actually 3 flags, but they're already all on the neutral flag. So you've got delete and keep. These 2 flags right here. So let's say that's a keeper. And then move on to the next one. Yeah, keeper. But you know, you'll eventually find one like that one that you don't like. Mark it rejected. There's also this is called labeling. Or set flag. There's hotkeys for these. Check them out. P is for pick, U is unflag, and X is rejected. I used to call it pick, so I think that's why it's P. And then this is where the smart collection comes in, okay? So let me find a couple more that I might want to reject, and I'll show you. So X, 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 P, P, P. Also,
What's the shortcut?
this, remember this right here, set flag? I'm hitting the letter.
P and U?
P and X are the main
P and
2.
X?
U is just take it back to nothing.
P and X.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So P is
Pick.
X is rejected.
Correcto. But it's the same as clicking these flags.
Right?
They're interchangeable, yeah. But you'll also see they get grayed out when they're rejected. There's also a way to hide them, so you don't even see them anymore. And there's a way to delete them too. So I'm going to try to get to as much as I can. But smart collections real quick. If we go over to that, let's create a new smart collection. and you'll see there's a lot more options for Create a Smart Collection. In fact, you can give it dozens of rules if you want. You can get very specific, although we've really only got one to work with. So we're going to call this Keepers. Actually, let's not do that. Let's call this To Delete. And then we'll look at how to delete them. Because I think someone asked you, yeah, we'll look at that.
How did you get that window to come up?
Well, you got to click on New Collection
Oh, okay, got
and then Smart Collection. And it doesn't matter where it exists. For me, I'll just put it in aircraft. Why not? Now, the rules that it matches. So you got any, all, none, but we'll do all. Okay, it has to be, to delete, it has to be, pick flag is rejected. Does this make sense? This is like what, Boolean or something, or yeah, is that right? It is. That's what they call it.
Boolean logic.
Right.
If then there.
Basic database stuff. Yeah. And I'm telling you, if you like that kind of stuff, if you like ordering things and organizing things, Lightroom is your dude, because you can do awesome stuff. This is just a taste. You can go by you can go by what lens you had, your location, so many options.
When you do all of this in Lightroom,
And
The
create,
files-
and they're all together. Sorry.
that's okay, no, the file structure that's underneath like in Windows, again, you have the Lightroom folder, if you will, and all that's still, you can see all the folders that's created with File Explorer.
Yeah,
So
you
when I
can.
select in my different backup apps, I can select, when I select all photos, it's going to choose all photos, or do I need to include the Lightroom things?
You can have multiple catalogs, and you can move stuff between them, but essentially they're like their own universe,
So-
independent. But what you would probably want to do if you want to start using Lightroom is just back up your Lightroom catalog and
that's-
your photos.
Okay. And
Because
that can be backed up, I can do it both.
yes, because if you just backed up the photos independent of anything with Lightroom, none of that would.
But
They would just be
so
as
it
they
doesn't
were.
See, when I say backup photos, that backup does not see the Lightroom photos. Is that what you're saying?
If you're not backing up Lightroom as well,
Okay.
yes,
All right.
yes. If you deleted Lightroom and everything, like I told you about the person that said that they deleted their catalog, that just means you go back to your original photos instantly. Lightroom wants to back itself up, but I think the easiest way is to have all your photos and all your Lightroom stuff in one folder, and that's all you got to back up.
And that's all your presets and everything like that.
Yep, it's automatically going to back up both your photos and your Lightroom data. And the minute you start moving stuff around, though, you're going to have problems. Yes?
This is the end of the class question. Is
Okay.
the survey is not up here.
Okay. I can get it for you. Go to the, well, do you need to go, or?
In a few minutes, yeah.
All right, so if you go to the globe, and then I'll take other questions. I'm not leaving until you guys are satisfied. Don't worry.
I think this is your account that's logged into.
It's not? It is?
Yeah.
Does it say my name right here?
This is more.
Oh, well, that's fine. That's fine. It's fine. Go to,
Well, it's saying enter password.
what's saying enter password?
Enter your name and password for the server.
You went to DS class, right?
It won't allow me. It popped up this box first.
Okay, well,
I can see the DS class, but I can't get to it.
yeah, it's going to be, I'll have to get it to you a different way.
Oh, never mind. I was able to click out of that.
I can do, yeah, I'm in DS class right now, so there's not much I can do.
I'm in DS class.
Okay, look at the bottom. There should be some web links at the bottom. Digital Studio Class Survey. If you order it by kind, in the list mode, the bottom is a class survey. So,
I have untitled is what mine's saying.
well, I'll have to come over there and get it for you in a minute. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. One last thing, and then we'll just do questions. All right. So, say you got these deleted. Now, here's a way where Lightroom can affect the actual files. Here's one way. Okay. So these guys that I don't want to keep, right? I want these gone. Okay. So I can select them all, and then I can do a couple things to them. I can go File, and then how do I delete them? There is a way. It's in a different place, isn't it? Oh, I'm gonna get reminded. It's under Edit, Delete Rejected Photos. There it is. So up under Photo, Delete Rejected Photos, or Command Backspace. Click that. Oh, I have to delete them from all photos. Okay, didn't know that. Actually, you don't even have to be looking at them to do that. If you've marked them as rejected and you do that, then you do. Now, here's the important one. If I click Remove, I didn't hurt the pictures. I just took them out of my Lightroom catalog, so they're a non-factor in Lightroom, but they still exist. Now, if I delete from disk, that's going to move them to the trash.
I got you.